Before we begin, I want you to think about something you do every single day, something so automatic, so private, that you never stop to question it. You wake up, walk into a small tiled room, and within minutes you've used technology that took thousands of years to develop. The bathroom, the most visited room in your home. And yet almost nobody knows its real story. What did people do before bathrooms existed? How did families, mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, all living under one roof, manage the most basic biological needs of daily life? And who at some point in history decided that all of this needed to change? The answer is stranger, darker, and more fascinating than you could ever imagine. Let's go back, way back. To a world without plumbing, without privacy, and without any of the rules we take for granted today. For most of human history, nature was the bathroom. Open fields, forests, riverbanks, these were the places where people relieved themselves. And for small communities scattered across vast landscapes, this actually worked fine. The ground absorbed it, rain washed it away, and life continued. Simple. But then something happened that changed everything. People started living together in large numbers. Cities began to form. And suddenly, what worked in an open field became a catastrophic problem in a crowded alley. The ancient civilizations were the first to realize this. And some of their solutions were surprisingly sophisticated. In the Indus Valley, in cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, built around 2500 BCE in what is now Pakistan, archaeologists discovered something extraordinary. These cities had organized drainage systems. Individual homes had small rooms designed specifically for waste, connected to covered brick drains that ran beneath the streets. This was not accidental. This was planned. An entire civilization had decided that managing human waste was important enough to build into the architecture of their cities from the very beginning. And then, mysteriously, that civilization collapsed, and much of that knowledge went with it. The ancient Romans picked up a version of this idea and took it to a dramatic extreme. They built massive public latrines, long stone benches with holes cut into them, positioned over channels of running water. These were not private spaces. Romans sat side by side, sometimes in groups of 20 or 30 people, taking care of business while holding conversations about politics, business, and daily life. There was no embarrassment. No privacy expected. After finishing, they used a communal sponge on a stick, one sponge, shared by everyone, dipped in a bucket of salt water or vinegar. And when they were done, they passed it to the next person. If that image makes you uncomfortable, welcome to history. The Romans also built the Cloaca Maxima, one of the world's earliest sewage systems, a massive underground channel that carried waste from the city directly into the Tiber River. It was so large that a boat could float through it, and parts of it still exist today, still functioning after more than 2,000 years. The Romans understood something fundamental, that a civilization's health depended on how it managed its waste, but then Rome fell. And Europe entered a period that, in terms of sanitation, can only be described as a disaster. Through the medieval period, roughly from 500 CE to 1500 CE, the progress that Rome had made largely disappeared. In the countryside, people used outhouses, small wooden structures built over a pit in the ground. These were placed away from the main house, which meant that on cold nights, on rainy nights, on nights when you were sick or elderly or very young, you had to make that journey anyway. There was no choice. Families with multiple members shared these structures. And the pits would fill over time and need to be dug out, a job performed by workers known in some places as gong farmers, who worked only at night and were paid relatively well precisely because nobody else would do it. In the cities, the situation was dramatically worse. Medieval European cities were dense, crowded, and almost entirely without sewage infrastructure. People used chamber pots, ceramic or metal bowls kept inside the home, and when they were full, the contents were simply thrown out of the window into the street below. There was a social convention in some cities, a shouted warning like Garde à l'eau in France, meaning watch out for the water before the contents hit the street. Some historians believe this is the origin of the English word loo, a common informal term for toilet. Whether that etymology is accurate or not, the image it conjures is perfectly real. The streets of medieval Paris, London, and other major European cities were rivers of filth. Waste mixed with mud, garbage, and animal droppings into a constant, reeking slick that pedestrians had to navigate every day. the wealthy had slightly better arrangements. Castles and large manor houses were often built with guardrobes, small rooms or alcoves built into the thickness of the stone walls, with a hole that dropped straight down the outside of the building or into a pit below. The word guardrobe literally means guard your robe, and one theory suggests that clothes were stored in these spaces because the smell of ammonia from the waste was believed to kill fleas and moths. So the medieval wardrobe, the room where you kept your clothes, may have originated as a toilet. Think about that next time you use the word. Even in royal palaces, the arrangements were crude by modern standards. At the Palace of Versailles, the most magnificent building in 17th century Europe, home to the French royal court, there were almost no fixed toilets for the thousands of courtiers and servants who lived there. People used chamber pots wherever they could, and the corridors, stairwells, and corners of that glittering palace were frequently used as informal toilets. Visitors described the smell of Versailles as overwhelming. The King of France, the most powerful man in the Western world, lived in a building that reeked of human waste. Meanwhile, something was brewing in the minds of inventors and thinkers. The idea of a water-powered flushing toilet, a mechanism that would use flowing water to carry waste away, had been floating around for centuries. But the person who actually built a working version and installed it in a real home was an Elizabethan writer and courtier named Sir John Harington. In 1596, Harington installed a flushing water closet in his home in Kelston, England, and designed a second one for his godmother, Queen Elizabeth I of England. He even wrote a book about it, a satirical work called A New Discourse of a Stale Subject, called The Metamorphosis of Ajax, Ajax being a pun on the word jakes, which was slang for toilet. Harrington's device had a pan, a water cistern, and a valve system that released water to flush the waste away. It was ingenious, it was practical, and almost nobody paid attention to it. The idea sat largely dormant for nearly 2 centuries. Then in 1775, a Scottish watchmaker named Alexander Cumming patented an improved version of the flushing toilet, introducing the S-shaped pipe, known as the S-bend or S-strap, beneath the bowl. This curve of pipe, when filled with water, created a seal that blocked sewer gases from rising back up into the room. This was a genuine breakthrough. It's the same basic principle used in toilets today. The S-bend didn't just make toilets more comfortable, it made them genuinely safer, preventing the flow of toxic and flammable gases into living spaces. A few years later, a cabinet maker named Joseph Bramah improved on Cumming's design, creating a valve mechanism that made the toilet more reliable and practical. Bramah went on to manufacture and sell his design commercially, but there was still a fundamental problem. The toilet was a device for wealthy people with houses that had water supplies. Most people still had no access to running water at all, and this is where the story takes a darker turn. Because in the 19th century, as European and American cities grew at an unprecedented rate, the old methods of waste disposal reached a catastrophic breaking point. London by the mid-1800s had a population of over 2 million people. The River Thames, which ran through the heart of the city and from which many Londoners drew their drinking water, was also the destination for the city's sewage. Cesspits beneath homes overflowed into basements and streets. The smell was so intense that in the summer of 1858, an event that became known as the Great Stink, the smell from the Thames was so powerful that Parliament, which sat alongside the river, could barely function. Curtains soaked in chloride of lime were hung in the windows in an attempt to block the smell, but smell was the least of the problems. The real killer was cholera. Cholera is a waterborne disease caused by bacteria found in contaminated water. Between 1831 and 1866, London suffered 4 major cholera epidemics that killed tens of thousands of people. For years, medical authorities believed cholera was spread through bad air, through the smell itself, a theory called the miasma theory. A physician named John Snow disagreed. During the 1854 outbreak in the Soho neighborhood of London, Snow carefully mapped the cases of cholera and traced them all to a single water pump on Broad Street. The water from that pump was contaminated with sewage from a nearby cesspit. Snow's work, some of the earliest examples of what we now call epidemiology, helped break the link between contaminated water and disease. It changed medicine forever. And it forced governments to act. London's response was monumental. An engineer named Joseph Bazalgette was commissioned to build a new sewage system for the entire city. Between 1858 and 1875, Bazalgette oversaw the construction of over 1,000 miles of street sewers and 82 miles of underground brick main sewers, an engineering achievement that required moving millions of tons of earth, laying tens of millions of bricks, and fundamentally reorganizing the underground geography of one of the world's great cities. The system carried sewage away from the populated center of London, treating and releasing it downstream. Deaths from cholera in London dropped dramatically. Bazalgette may have saved more lives than almost any other person in British history, and almost nobody knows his name. Now at the same time all of this was happening underground, something was happening inside homes that would transform the private experience of hygiene forever. Bathing, actual washing of the human body, had an equally complicated history. For much of the medieval and early modern period, bathing was viewed with deep suspicion in Europe. The Roman tradition of public baths had been abandoned, and there was a widespread belief, reinforced by some religious thinking, that opening the pores of the skin through bathing allowed disease to enter the body. Some physicians actively advised against frequent bathing. The very wealthy might bathe a few times a year. The poor might go years without what we would recognize as a full bath. And yet bathing never entirely disappeared. People bathed in rivers, in wooden tubs filled with water heated over fires, in communal bathhouses that existed in various forms throughout the medieval period. Personal cleanliness was valued. It simply looked very different from what we expect today. Hands were washed before meals, faces were wiped. Linen undergarments were changed regularly and were considered a form of cleanliness in themselves, the white linen next to the skin absorbing sweat and oil, then being washed and replaced. The shift toward regular private bathing began in the 18th century with the Enlightenment, a broader cultural movement toward reason, science, and the questioning of old beliefs. As understanding of the body improved, the old fears about bathing faded. The wealthy began to bathe more regularly, using portable copper or tin tubs brought into private rooms and filled by servants carrying heated water. Bathing became associated with refinement and civilization, and gradually it spread. The Industrial Revolution created the conditions for the modern bathroom to emerge. Mass production made plumbing fixtures cheaper. Iron and steel pipes made it possible to carry water through buildings efficiently. Steam-powered pumps could raise water to upper floors. Gas and later electric water heaters made hot water available on demand. By the latter half of the 19th century, the pieces were all in place. The indoor bathroom, a dedicated room combining toilet, sink, and bathing facilities, emerged first in the homes of the wealthy in Britain and America in the 1850s and 1860s. It was considered a luxury, a sign of modernity and social standing. Hotels and grand houses competed to offer the most advanced plumbing. In America, the White House received its first fixed bathtub in 1851. By the 1880s and 1890s, middle-class homes in cities were increasingly built with dedicated bathrooms as a standard feature. And the name that became most associated with the modern toilet, a name so embedded in cultural memory that in some countries the toilet itself is named after him, is Thomas Crapper. Crapper was a British plumber and entrepreneur who held several patents related to bathroom plumbing, including improvements to the ballcock, the floating valve mechanism that controls the water level in a toilet cistern. He did not, despite the popular story, invent the flush toilet, but his showrooms, his marketing, and his manufacturing helped normalize and popularize indoor plumbing in Britain. His name, stamped on his products, became so widely known that some historians believe it contributed to the slang term still used today, though that particular etymology remains debated. By the early 20th century, the indoor bathroom was rapidly becoming standard in middle-class homes across Britain, Western Europe, and North America. Running water, flush toilets, bathtubs, and eventually showers were shifting from luxury features to basic expectations. Public health campaigns reinforced the message, cleanliness prevented disease, and disease had ravaged cities for centuries. The bathroom was not just comfort, it was survival. The design of bathrooms evolved too. Early bathrooms were functional but often cold and clinical: white tiles, exposed pipes, large ceramic fixtures that looked more like medical equipment than domestic furniture. Through the 20th century, design transformed them into intimate personal spaces. Colors were introduced, materials became more refined. The shower, once a relatively minor feature, became in many homes the primary bathing method. The bathroom cabinet, the bathroom mirror, the towel rail, the bath mat, these small details accumulated into a room that was now deeply personal, a private retreat in the middle of daily life. But the bathroom, as it came to be known in the Western world, did not appear simultaneously everywhere. In Japan, the tradition of bathing was ancient and deeply ritualized. The Japanese had developed sophisticated bathing culture centuries before Europeans embraced regular washing. The afuro, a deep soaking tub filled with very hot water, was a central part of daily life. Japanese bathrooms were designed around the separation of bathing from toilet functions, a design principle still common in Japanese homes today. In the Islamic world, ritual cleanliness has always required regular washing, and public baths known as hammams, elaborate, architecturally magnificent spaces, had existed for over 1,000 years, providing communal bathing in a context of social gathering and religious practice. The global spread of Western-style plumbing in the 20th century brought flush toilets and bathroom fixtures to more and more of the world, but it also clashed with existing traditions. In many Asian countries, the squat toilet, a ground-level fixture more closely aligned with natural human posture, and actually considered by some health experts to be ergonomically superior, remained standard. The debate between Western sitting toilets and squat toilets continues today, with some modern research suggesting the squatting position more closely matches the body's natural mechanics for waste elimination. And today, the bathroom continues to evolve. In Japan, the high-tech toilet seat, the washlet, manufactured by TOTO and first introduced in 1980, transformed the experience entirely. With heated seats, integrated bidet functions, adjustable water temperature and pressure, and in some models, air drying and automatic flushing. The Japanese toilet seat represents perhaps the most radical rethinking of bathroom technology since the invention of the S-bend. These features, long standard in Japanese homes, are gradually spreading to markets around the world. Smart bathrooms are emerging in luxury homes and hotels, sensors that adjust lighting and temperature, mirrors that display the time and weather, showers that can be controlled by voice or smartphone. The bathroom, that small private room, has become a space of technological ambition, and yet, across the world, the bathroom remains a profound marker of inequality. According to the World Health Organization, as of the early 2020s, roughly 3.6 billion people, nearly half the world's population, lack access to safely managed sanitation. Open defecation, the practice of relieving oneself outdoors without any facility, affects hundreds of millions of people, predominantly in rural areas of South Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. The consequences are devastating: the spread of disease, the contamination of water supplies, the particular dangers faced by women and girls who must venture out alone. The sanitation crisis is one of the most serious public health emergencies in the world, quiet and unglamorous and rarely discussed. The history of the bathroom is, in the end, the history of civilization itself, of how societies organize their most basic functions, how they protect health, how they define privacy, how they balance individual comfort against collective infrastructure. From the drains of Mohenjo-Daro to the smart toilets of Tokyo, from the stinking streets of medieval London to the engineering triumph of Bazalgette sewers, from the chamber pots of Versailles to the glaming Thailand chrome bathrooms that hundreds of millions of people take entirely for granted every single morning, this is the story of a room that shaped the world. The next time you close that door behind you, take a second. That small, ordinary moment, warm water, clean surfaces, a working drain, is the product of 5,000 years of human ingenuity, suffering, engineering, and stubbornness. And billions of people are still waiting for it.